You need to hear this because most people never realize what is happening until it is already too late. The moment you stopped pursuing them, they noticed it immediately, but probably not in the way you might imagine. It was not met with relief, comfort, or simple indifference. Instead, they noticed it with a sudden and almost unsettling clarity, a kind of realization that shakes their thoughts all the way down to the deepest part of their mind. When you stop chasing, the world around you does not simply shift in a few small ways. Something much deeper begins to change. The person you once kept going after begins a quiet and invisible process of falling apart internally. And this is where things can become extremely uncomfortable for them. They begin to sense an empty space where your attention, energy, and constant presence used to be. A space they may never have even noticed before. Now that space feels huge and impossible to ignore. They are not accustomed to sitting with that kind of silence, so they begin to panic without completely understanding the reason. If you want to understand the deeper psychological truth about what happens when you stop chasing, hit like right now. Most people completely misunderstand this part. Your absence does not simply register as absence in their mind. Instead, it begins working like a mirror. It reflects things back to them that they never wanted to see or acknowledge about themselves. Deep down, they begin realizing that the sense of power and control they once felt over you has suddenly disappeared. And what happens when that control disappears? Their inner world becomes restless, unsettled, and increasingly uncomfortable. Their thoughts can become desperate in ways they struggle to explain. Their mind begins whispering difficult truths that they may feel too ashamed or uncomfortable to admit openly. The things they successfully avoid during the daytime can return to their thoughts when everything becomes quiet at night. They begin asking themselves whether they truly wanted you for who you were, or whether they wanted you because of the way your attention made them feel valuable, desired, important, or powerful. And now that you are no longer constantly there, that false image begins to weaken. Yet they cannot fully understand what is happening while they are awake and trying to reason through it. Their mind becomes divided between what they hope will happen and what they secretly fear might happen. That internal conflict can push them toward a kind of quiet emotional chaos they cannot easily put into words. They begin imagining your life continuing without them. Every laugh you share, every smile you give to someone else, every experience you enjoy, and every moment you spend without thinking about them can begin hurting them in a silent and unexpected way. And here comes the difficult part that surprises so many people. What they feel is not simply longing. It can also involve anger, fear, guilt, frustration, jealousy, and regret, all mixed together in ways they cannot properly organize. These emotions may begin showing up through strange behaviors that seem irrational, confusing, or even reckless at times. Most people never willingly confront feelings like these. Instead, they try to escape the discomfort. They pretend the emotions are not there. They distract themselves, create excuses, or convince themselves that everything is perfectly fine. But you have brought those feelings closer to the surface simply by pulling away. By stepping back and allowing them to sit with an empty space they were never prepared to face, something deep and instinctive begins waking up inside them. Something that has been hidden underneath layers of denial and self-deception starts moving again. That inner voice that remained quiet for so long begins getting louder. It tells them that they cannot simply lose you and move on as though nothing happened. It tells them that they cannot let you go so easily. They begin remembering every conversation, every message, every glance, every disagreement, and every small moment you shared. They start examining themselves more carefully, and at the same time, they start analyzing you. They search for the exact moment when things changed. They try to discover what they could possibly do to bring you back into their reach. And here is the part that can feel most disturbing. They begin feeling an intense need to do something about the situation. Not necessarily because they carefully planned it, but sometimes suddenly and impulsively. The human mind strongly dislikes unfinished situations and uncertainty. You have created an enormous amount of uncertainty simply by stepping away. You may not see it from your side yet. You may believe that silence is peaceful and that your absence cannot possibly have much impact. But absence, when used as a genuine withdrawal of attention rather than a game, can become one of the strongest forces in a relationship dynamic. The moment they realize they can no longer make you chase them is the moment their outer image begins to crack. Once that image starts slipping, the things they have pushed down, ignored, and denied for years can begin rising back toward the surface. And that is the dangerous part for their emotional stability, because the calm and confident person they show everyone on the outside may no longer match what they are experiencing inside. They may struggle to understand their own reactions, even when they desperately want an explanation. In your silence, you have become the center of an internal process they did not expect. But here is what keeps this entire story moving forward. What comes next is something they cannot predict ahead of time. Even they may not fully understand what they are about to feel or what they might do in response. This is where we pause the first part for a moment. The silence you created is not truly empty. It functions like a mirror, reflecting back everything they have been avoiding. And that reflection is getting ready to speak louder and louder inside their mind. They cannot simply stop thinking about it. Not necessarily because they consciously choose to think about you, but because the empty space you left behind refuses to disappear from their awareness. Comment below if you have ever walked away and noticed that the other person suddenly seemed to start unraveling. Here is the truth they may keep hidden even from themselves. In many situations, absence can feel more frightening than direct rejection. Rejection has a definite shape. You know where you stand. You can see what happened and understand what it means. Absence is different. Absence can feel like complete disorder. It creates an open space where their deepest fears begin filling in the blanks. And this is where everything starts becoming much more complicated for them. They begin noticing every little detail they ignored before. Every pause in conversation, every delayed response, every change in your behavior, every smile that does not involve them suddenly becomes meaningful. Every small withdrawal of your attention can hit their inner world much harder than they expected. They begin replaying moments that seemed completely unimportant when they were happening. That joke you laughed at without them, that brief glance you gave somebody else, that message you did not respond to immediately. All of these moments can begin playing repeatedly in their mind. And during that constant replay, they begin searching for patterns, or at least what they believe are patterns. Their thoughts desperately try to create a clear explanation from pieces that do not fit together. Their pride struggles with situations that have no obvious answer. And an unclear situation is exactly what you gave them when you stepped back. Here is the quiet fear that begins growing inside them. They start questioning their own decisions. Did they misunderstand you? Did they judge you incorrectly? Did they push you too far? Did they take your attention for granted? Did they fail to appreciate your value when they had the opportunity? These hidden questions begin rising into their awareness like old memories they thought they had buried. Most people do not realize that the human mind does not always accept loss quietly. It searches for a way to repair what feels broken. And when no real solution is available, the mind may begin creating one. It creates stories, explanations, possibilities, and imagined scenarios in an attempt to regain some sense of control. And how does this begin showing up in their behavior? At first, it can appear in very small ways. A sudden desire to contact you, a quiet curiosity about what you are doing, a temptation to check whether you have moved on, a thought about where you might be or who you might be spending time with. Then those thoughts can become stronger. They may begin dreaming about you. They may repeatedly imagine conversations that never happened. They may replay old situations and wonder how everything could have gone differently. They begin thinking about what they could have said, what they should have done, or what they wish they had changed. Regret can become so painful that it starts feeling sharp and bitter. They begin feeling trapped inside their own thoughts because your distance has activated something very basic inside them. The realization that they cannot obtain your attention through pressure anymore. They cannot rely on the same tricks, emotional games, charm, or familiar patterns that may have worked before. And this is often the point where many people begin experiencing a serious shift in their thinking, because the human mind is simply not comfortable living with the feeling that it has lost control. When control disappears, uncertainty takes its place. And when uncertainty takes its place, the mind starts searching desperately for an answer. That is why your silence can feel so much louder than your words ever did. It forces them to sit with questions they could previously avoid. It makes them notice the space where your attention used to be. It makes them wonder whether the person they assumed would always be there has finally decided to move forward. And the longer you remain focused on yourself rather than chasing after them, the more difficult it can become for them to maintain the story they once told themselves. They may have believed you would eventually come back. They may have assumed you would send another message. They may have expected you to explain yourself, apologize, or ask for another chance. But when none of those things happen, their certainty begins to weaken. Suddenly, they are left with a question they cannot easily escape. What if you are actually done? That single thought can change everything. Because now the situation is no longer about whether you can get their attention. It becomes about whether they can accept the possibility that they have genuinely lost yours. And that is a very different psychological experience. The person who once felt comfortable watching you chase them may now find themselves wondering why you are no longer looking in their direction. The person who once believed they had unlimited access to your time may suddenly realize that access was never guaranteed. The person who once depended on your attention to feel important may now have to discover where that sense of importance comes from without you. And that is where the deepest internal conflict can begin. Because when you stop chasing, you are not simply removing messages or calls. You are removing reinforcement. You are removing the constant reminder that they still have an emotional hold over you. You are removing the certainty that you will always return. And when that certainty disappears, their mind has to confront reality without the comfort of knowing exactly what you will do next. That is why your silence can become so powerful. Not because silence is a manipulation tactic, but because genuine distance reveals what was already hidden beneath the surface. It reveals attachment. It reveals insecurity. It reveals pride. It reveals fear. It reveals regret. And sometimes it reveals that the connection meant far more to them than they were ever willing to admit, while they believed you would never leave. So if you have recently stopped chasing someone, do not automatically assume that nothing is happening simply because they are not speaking. Silence on the outside does not always mean silence on the inside. Sometimes the quietest moments are the ones in which the greatest amount of thinking is taking place. And while you may be wondering why they have not reached out yet, they may be wondering why you have finally stopped waiting. That reversal changes the entire dynamic. The question is no longer, how do I get them to notice me? The question becomes, what are they going to do now that they can no longer rely on me to keep the connection alive? And that is where the next stage begins. Deep within them, there is a hidden fear they rarely admit, even to themselves, that they could lose you completely and never get you back. Their mind may try to act calm, but underneath that surface, something much more restless has begun to wake up. Drop a comment if this reveals what happens inside their subconscious when you suddenly become silent and stop giving them the attention they once expected. This fear does not operate through calm reasoning or careful decisions. It comes from older instincts buried deep within the mind, the parts that want to reach out, demand answers, seek reassurance, and react before thinking clearly. And here is the uncomfortable truth many people do not want to face. Their inner world can begin creating plans without their conscious mind even realizing what is happening. They may start telling themselves that they need to prove they still matter to you. They may convince themselves that they have to make you chase them again or somehow get your attention back. Sometimes they may even develop the desire to make you regret walking away. When their pride feels wounded, their understanding of what is fair and what is right can suddenly become very flexible. The pleasant image they showed the world begins to crack. The explanations they created to justify their behavior start becoming harder to believe. The social mask they carefully maintained can slowly begin falling apart. And this is when the situation starts becoming deeply personal for them, because they are no longer simply dealing with your absence. They are now forced to deal with powerful emotions inside themselves that they do not know how to control. Desire, jealousy, guilt, embarrassment, anger, and longing can all collide at the same time, creating an emotional weight that becomes difficult for them to carry. Yet they still may not know how to respond in a healthy or peaceful way. Instead, they move between two completely different emotional worlds. In one world, they desperately want your attention again. In the other, they are frightened by how strongly they want it. In one moment, they imagine reconnecting with you and making everything feel normal again. In the next moment, they become frustrated with themselves because they cannot understand why they suddenly need you this much. And here is the strange part of the entire situation. You did not have to create some dramatic event. You did not need to confront them, threaten them, or make some huge statement. You simply stopped pursuing them. You stepped back. You became quieter. And by doing something that looks so small from the outside, you may have awakened some of the deepest and most private thoughts inside their mind. These are the parts they may have hidden for years, the parts they do not feel comfortable admitting to friends, the parts they may not even be willing to acknowledge privately. In the quiet moments, those buried thoughts begin speaking in a much louder way. They begin whispering that perhaps they are weaker than they wanted to believe. Perhaps they are not as independent as they pretended. Perhaps they want something they cannot simply control or obtain whenever they decide they want it. Most people try to escape uncomfortable emotions as quickly as possible. They find distractions. They become busy. They talk to other people. They create explanations that make the situation seem less important. They tell themselves that they do not care. They may even try to convince themselves that you were never that significant in the first place. But deep emotional discomfort cannot always be solved with simple logic. What is happening underneath may be much deeper than an ordinary thought. It can feel like an internal alarm that continues sounding even when they are trying to ignore it. The more they push it away, the more it may return in unexpected moments. And this is where everything can begin changing quickly. The longer you remain distant, the more their inner confusion can grow. Your silence gives them fewer external answers, which means their mind has more empty space to fill. Suddenly, they start noticing details about you that they once overlooked. They remember the confidence you carried. They notice the way you seemed comfortable being yourself. They remember your smile, your energy, your independence, and the way you could continue with your day even when they were not involved. They may begin realizing that your life did not stop when they walked away. Every new observation can feel like another emotional blow to their pride. Every new realization adds another layer of pressure. They remain caught between fear and desire, between what they deeply want and what they are willing to openly admit. They may want to reach out, yet fear rejection. They may want to see you again, yet worry that you have moved on. They may want reassurance, yet feel too proud to ask for it. They may want to know whether you still care, yet hesitate, because hearing the wrong answer could hurt their ego even more. And in that uncomfortable space, their imagination begins creating situations they never expected to imagine. They may picture themselves regaining your attention. They may imagine coming back together. They may imagine what it would feel like if you suddenly contacted them first. They may even create scenarios where they somehow get revenge or make you understand what they felt. Your decision to step away has forced them to confront one simple reality they may have tried to avoid for a long time. You are not something they can control. You are not someone they can simply direct whenever they want. You have your own choices, your own boundaries, your own direction, and your own ability to walk away. And that realization can hurt more than they expected. The deeper issue is not simply that you are gone. It is that your absence has shown them something about themselves. They are beginning to understand that their sense of security may have depended more heavily on your attention than they ever wanted to admit. They are alert now, even if they are not fully conscious of why. Their inner mind has become restless, questioning, replaying, remembering, and searching for answers. They may not know where these thoughts will eventually lead them, but something has already started shifting. The emotional disturbance begins in small ways. Perhaps it is an unexplained tension in their body. Perhaps it is a sudden feeling of nervousness when they think about you. Perhaps they reach for their phone without even realizing why. Perhaps they open an old conversation, look at a photograph, revisit a memory, or wonder what you might be doing right now. At first, they may dismiss these moments as nothing important, but gradually, the feeling can become harder to ignore. A quiet sense of panic begins entering their thoughts, their urges, and even ordinary moments of their day. And here is the difficult truth they eventually have to face. Your absence is not simply empty space. It can function like a mirror they cannot easily turn away from. When you were present, they could focus on you. They could react to your messages, your attention, your emotions, and your actions. They could blame circumstances. They could point towards something you did wrong. They could keep themselves occupied with the relationship dynamic. But when you step back, there is suddenly less to react to. And in that silence, they are left with themselves. What they see in that internal mirror may frighten them. They may see their insecurity. They may see their dependency. They may see their fear of being abandoned. They may notice how much validation they needed from you. They may recognize how strongly they wanted to feel important, desired, or in control. Type mirror if you have ever watched your absence reveal something that your presence could never expose. For a long time, they may have protected themselves with certain beliefs. They were in control. They did not need anyone. They could walk away whenever they wanted. They were stronger than their emotions. They could replace anyone. They could move forward without looking back. But your silence quietly challenges those beliefs without requiring you to say a single word. That is why stepping away can sometimes communicate more than confrontation ever could. You do not always need another argument. You do not always need to explain yourself again. You do not have to keep proving your worth to someone who already had the opportunity to recognize it. Silence can reveal what constant conversation keeps hidden. Refusing to chase can become a powerful boundary. And once that boundary is established, their inner world may become much louder. All the feelings they pushed down begin returning. All the stories they told themselves begin coming back for examination. All the pride they used as protection rises to the surface. The emotions they once kept separated begin mixing together. Desire becomes mixed with anger. Care becomes mixed with fear. Longing becomes mixed with regret. Pride becomes mixed with insecurity. They may find themselves holding their phone, hovering over your name, considering whether they should send a message. Their fingers may be ready to type, while another part of them insists that they should not. They know reaching out could expose how much they care, yet staying silent can feel almost unbearable. And that uncertain moment can deepen the internal conflict. Every person has private emotional corners filled with fears, wishes, insecurities, and thoughts they do not openly share. When circumstances move beyond their control, those hidden corners can become much more noticeable. The feelings they normally keep buried begin searching for a way to escape. They may continue appearing calm on the outside. They may speak normally. They may post as if nothing happened. They may laugh with friends and behave as though they have completely moved forward. But the subconscious does not always follow the performance. It remembers. It compares. It searches.